There you go. So again, those things that are counterintuitive or are usually less efficient in terms of time. Something that to understand migrations, if you're reading it, it might take, I don't know, a few months for you to finally understand it. And the idea is to give you a quick introduction to it, and hopefully it's gonna stay somewhere in the back of your head. And once you start working with it, it's gonna make a lot more sense, and we have saved you time, basically. That's the objective of this course. And there are many things like these ones, so we've gone into a lot of details in terms of the request response cycle. So for example, if you ever want to do something like middlewares, which is a Django feature, it's not going to be really hard because you already understand the request and response cycle, or at least you're getting used to it. And as we're done with the course, it's going to be a lot more clear how it works. So again, let's get started with migrations. Stop me at any moment, because we know that this is a complicated topic. Good. And why migrations first? Products change, data changes, there are new requirements added all the time. Think about any product, how it started and what it's today. And we're always constantly making changes to our products. And usually changes mean reshaping our data, changing, I don't know, requirements about the length of it. You thought that the highest number of votes that a restaurant could get was 1,000, and you chose a small number, and now you're really popular and you have more people, so you have to change your table. You're adding new columns, you're removing new columns, you're adding more tables, you're removing tables, or adding models and removing models, etc. So you're changing your data. Your database is alive, and it's always breathing and changing, being mutative, especially by requirements. Something that we cannot look the other way, because it's the way our business works, basically. And modifying the structure of your database is really hard, because as you might imagine, it's like pivoting, a Titanic. It's like you have all the data loaded, and you have to reshape the thing with data in it. So it's really dangerous, and it usually requires a little bit of thought. And on top of that, databases are usually limited in the operations you can perform. So you will be not only scared of making these changes, but you will also be limited by the functionality that is available in your database. So this is the first important thing: data changes. We thought about our simple models right here, simple models. And of course that if our company is successful, 1 year from now, these models will look a lot different than what they are currently looking. How could you handle database migrations? And by migrations, I mean exactly that: changing the structure of your data, changing the shape of your data, etc. With a traditional SQL database without Django. I want you again to go back to the only SQL class. We are not talking about Django. And the objective of these 10 minutes of pure SQL migrations will be for you to understand how hard it is. If you can feel the pain, because Django migrations will be a solution. If I show you the solution, you'll say, it's like when I showed Jordan Heroku, it's like, that's dumb, because if you don't feel the pain, it's hard to get, or it's hard to understand a good solution like Django migrations is.
Jordan's never going to live that one down, huh?
Probably never, I think.
We'll be old, and I will be reminding you of that. All right, so to get started, we have a regular database as in our previous example. You have books, ID of the book, author ID, title of the book, and ISBN code. simple. Have a couple of books right there. So the first requirement that we get is that we should add, from now on, the marketing people come and say, from now on, books should have a popularity column, and it cannot be null. It's a required column. Every book must have a popularity field or value attached to it. So there are commands, this is the requirement. There are commands to modify the structure of your tables. The alter table command, it's a SQL command, will let you change your table by performing certain operations. One of them is adding a column. It's going to be, I don't want you to focus on the syntax because you will never use it once you see the Django migrations. So if it makes sense, that's good. Alter table, the table, add a column, this name of the column, this type of the column, these requirements, not null. If I run this, it's going to fail because you already have data in the database, but you're saying that this thing is not null. So what value is going to take the previous books that you have in your table? You know, it's like an inconsistency by your part. SQLite in this case is, again, it's good. It's making sense out of the data that it has and the requirement you have, and they don't match. So what could be a solution for this? Well, you have two solutions. You could, one of them is giving it a default value, right? You can just give it a default value, and I'm gonna show you that, and now it will just work. So it's pretty much the same command as before, popularity, which is a text field, it's not null, and the default value is 1.99. Now we have that field in each one of these sites. The problem is that life isn't usually as simple as in this case. There is no one single default value that will match all your books in this case, or the popularity of all your books. Usually it's a little bit more complicated in terms of that. For example, the marketing people say that the popularity must be, here it is, must be computed by the length, or based on the length of the book. It's a really bad metric, but you know, these marketing guys probably have something. And that is that it will be proportional to the length of the book. This book has a few characters, it's going to have less, it's going to be less popular than this one that has more characters. Plain and simple. We don't want to stick with the dumb example that I chose. It's just that it's a little bit more complicated than just giving a regular default value. Oh, I made it text, by the way. It should be integer or float or decimal. My bad. Doesn't matter, because we will not care too much about it. So how we're gonna make this thing work? We can't create it null without specifying anything, and we cannot set a default one because it's not gonna be the default one. Well, the procedure usually involves a few steps to achieve these final results. You will first initialize, you will pretty much run this thing, but without making it not null. You will make it nullable first for a few seconds. You're gonna initialize the field popularity as nullable. You will then backfill all the previous books, and then you will turn it into a nullable field. So you have fulfilled the requirement. You have a popularity field, which is required because you have just done that, but you have in between also backfill all the previous values that corresponded for the books that you had already in the database. Make sense?
I think I get it.
Good. I'm going to reset the database because, of course, I already made the change here, so we want to start over. Again, it's going to be create the popularity field, but it can be null. So when you create it, actually, let's do it. I'm going to reconnect to the database because I have just changed it. Let's make the field nullable. There you go. So now if I, for example, run all the books, There you go. We have all of them are none because, of course, we didn't have data for that. Now we're gonna backfill the books, and this is gonna involve a little bit of logic. We don't care too much about the logic. Basically, this is a popularity function. These are all our books in the current database, ID and title. And what we're gonna do is run them through this popularity function that, given the book and the length, is gonna give you, whoa, my bad, haven't executed this one. It's gonna give you the popularity of this book. This is plain Python, there is no SQL, there is no Django, nothing involved here. I get this list, basically. I first get the longest title with these expressions, these two expressions. I create an empty popularities list. I start iterating over this list, and I check the current title divided by the longest one, and I make it proportional. So, for example, I run it and I add everything together and return it. So, for example, Emma, who has only 4 characters, is going to have 1.11 of popularity. This one, which is the longest one, it's going to have 5.0. This one, which is pretty close, it's going to be 4.72. You guys can check the code later. It's pure logic, nothing technical in terms of SQL or Django or anything. Make sense, the steps?
So far, I think so.
Good. So now that I have this popularity, I need to backfill the data. So what I'm gonna do is run an update query. I'm gonna do update book, set popularity equals to a given popularity where this ID happens. So basically I'm iterating over each one of these. I get the first one, the ID is 1, book ID is 1. So set popularity equals to whatever was this thing, where the ID is this one right here. By the way, remember that I made a mistake and I'm setting this as text, but that will not matter. So I run the whole thing and I check. Now I make a select query selecting ID, title, and popularity. I get the correct values. And now I have to go back to my original requirement and I need to make these field not null, because again, now it's nullable, so I had some room to backfill them. But as the data is backfill, I need to now make it mandatory by putting it not null. So I should run another command, alter table, book, modify column, popularity is now not null. Sadly, there is no such command in SQLite, so we will not demonstrate it. We could do it by creating an intermediate table, but it doesn't make even sense to start with that because Django is going to fix all these, going to make it a lot easier. Make sense? Questions? So let's start from the beginning. We started again with this. We don't even have a popularity. They asked us, we need now a popularity field. By the way, I have all the steps of the SQL are in this notebook, and all the steps that we will follow with the migrations are all here. So you can follow them later. So first step is adding the new popularity field. So this is what you have so far. And then you will, of course, that I left this one commented for simplicity. But at some point, people, the marketing people come and say, hey, we need to add a new field, popularity. Simple. Object-oriented programming, you know how to do it. You will create this field, and you will say there's a popularity field, which is a decimal field. It's going to have 4 digits at most, 2 decimal places. It's going to be null true and blank true. Right? You are making it first nullable because we will employ the same technique as the one we were simulating with SQLite. We will make it first nullable, we will backfill the previous popularity fields, and then we will change it back to null, to not null, sorry, and it will work in Django. First step, again, we set a popularity field equals to being nullable and not nullable. Yes, nullable and blank. This is kind of a syntax thing that you will start seeing more often now. And it's just up to this point, whenever we were defining a field, we were always considering that it was required. Well, if you have a not required or an optional field in your models, you will usually make it null true and blank true. There is a slight distinction between these two, but it's not incredibly important. I'm going to show you something later when we open the admin in a few minutes. So for now, we should set null and blank to true. Whenever you introduce a change in your models, remember that your models are sitting one level higher than your database. It's this high-level interface that you're using to communicate with the database. Whenever you make a change to your models, or when you create new models, you need to reflect those changes down, if you want, to the database. You have to synchronize the models that you have up conceptually with the tables that are created in the data at the database label. And for that, we use migrations. We create migrations that reflect those changes, and they are the ones in charge of synchronizing from the high-level model structure to the table. Conceptually make sense?
Yes.
So
I could use a reiteration of that.
Yeah, remember that. So these are high-level classes, Python classes, but these are the ones we're using to access the database. So sorry guys, you can thank Mike for making me draw. I know you love my drawings.
You're welcome.
We do love your drawings.
You have your database, which has, of course, the real tables. The data is stored truly here in tables. But again, we use Python objects to communicate models, right? To communicate with the database. Instead of writing SQL, select star from book, we were doing something like here. We're doing something book.objects.all, reading the entire database. So we are here putting a division there, and we are here. We are interacting with these objects. But again, these objects are just all the time communicating with the database to fetch, of course, the real data or to insert their real data. So every time that you make a slightly change here, you need to reflect that to your database. And every time that you add a field, you remove a field, you even create one new model, you need to synchronize the changes back to the database, right? So these models will reflect what you have in your tables and the other way around.
So migrate, does it migrate simply mean synchronize to the database?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
In this case, that we are adding a new field here, you're adding a new field. What it's going to do, it's just, so you added the new field. This is, no, right. There.
I've got a question about this.
Yep.
So, I mean, I get what's happening here. Migration means that you're triggering the models bit of Python code to interact with the database and make changes, right? Like you're running it like it's its own little program. But if the models are part of a larger app and you're serving it, you know, it's running from a server, why is it not automatically mapping to the database?
Because a design decision. Django people thought, I mean, data is an important thing. If you have things automatically mapped and migrated, you don't have control over it. You have to manually do this on purpose. because we will actually have full control. I'm going to show you in a sec. So the idea is that we have, for example, this is our book model, and it has a title. So it has a title, which is synchronized. It has an author, which is synchronized, and it has an ISBN code, which is synchronized. It's going to be book. But I have just added a new field, popularity, right here, which is not synchronized. If I looked at these, where is the, here, I'm gonna mark it. There you go. If I was taking a look at the book table, I'm gonna see a table that has ID, as all the other tables, ID, title, author ID, and what else? And ISBN. And that's it. No more tables, no more columns, sorry, because this one is not synchronized. After I run the migrations, Django will create these new column, popularity, and now here, this one will be synchronized. That's the process we're gonna follow. Make sense? So first step is, before we can run the migration, we have to create the migration. And this is related to the question that Mike had before, or the comment. It's an important one. It's a design decision. These people don't want your data to just be randomly changed by an obscure command. So what you do first is create the migration. You will, I told you, I kind of simplify it, saying you create a change and then you apply the migration. Well, not so much. You make the change, you create a migration, you create the migration first. We will look at it. We will see this thing that represents our change. And when we're happy, we will apply it. It's an extra safety step. The command to create the migration is actually, if I show you the one in the make file, it's not gonna make a lot of sense. It's gonna be just make migrations as it sounds. It's gonna be something like, where is it? I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, the link is broken. It's going to be this one right here, make migrations. You don't need to worry too much about it. It's just make migrations. So that's the command behind the scenes is going to be Django admin. Actually, I have something here, make migrations. By the way, starting next week, we will remove the make file. You will start to run these commands by yourselves once you're familiar with them, because we're abstracting too many things for you. So again, going back to the simple one, you had a command that it's running the server, you have a command that it's running the shell, and you have a command that it's making the migration. So I will just run make migrations, and it's actually telling you what it changed. It's going to tell you that a migration in our sample app, the only one we have, was created with a new migration 0002 book popularity that added a field popularity to book. It's telling you what it did. And it actually created a new file, and this thing is basically this migration that you have right here. It created this thing that represents that change. Migrations are, and it's a really smart decision by the Django people. Actually, it started as a different project, and they then incorporated it into the core of Django. Migrations are kind of a waterfall of processes that were applied one after the other in the life of our database, and they kind of represent the life cycle of a database. It started somehow, I added a field, I removed a field, I added a new column, I changed the not null of the column, I added a new model. So you can trace the whole life of your database with these migration options. Each point, it's like a photograph of your database at each point in time of your database.
So it's kind of like Git.
Yes, exactly. It's like a list of commits. Yes. And usually they are sequential. So it's going to be 0001, 0002, 3, 4, and they regularly have dependencies. They were created after a given migration, and you can have actually more dependencies, or you can have, so for example, sometimes both two different applications. For example, we're implementing, for example, Amazon. So we have customer service as an app. We have, I don't know, shopping, whatever. We have products as other cart. We have warehouse as other app. And sometimes these apps will be related. So sometimes the dependencies will be actually, that's why this thing is a list. You might have many dependencies. I have introduced a change right now, but I need that my previous migration from warehouse, and it also depends on that previous migration of customers, so you might have a different dependencies. The idea of dependencies is exactly this line here. It's this migration was created after this one, so it depends on this one. So if you can actually replay the changes in your database, you can go back and forth in your database, which is a pretty neat feature. So we have just created this migration, and I told you that we usually create it and take a look at it. Actually, when you're just adding one field, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's actually, the code isn't always so simple. If you look at the first migration, it's this ugly thing, and it's basically representing your initial point in time. There is always an initial migration, the first one, initial equals true. It's the one saying how this thing started, and from here we're going to start adding changes. You don't need to look again to these things. It's just, as long as you're conscious of what change you've made, you created the migration, that's fine. And now we have created the object, we will now apply the migration to the database so we can finally synchronize, and we will create here the field and synchronize. So here what I'm going to do is migrate, as simple as that. Migrate, by the way, Django has internally, it is creating a new table in the database with all the migrations that it has applied. So it remembers all the changes that you've made and the ones that you have applied. In your migrations directory, here you have 01 and 02. Here, 01, and we have now 02. But in your database, as you haven't applied anything yet, you only have 01. And you can actually see that with the show migrations command. It's going to show you a bunch of apps. And finally, sample app, for example, it doesn't have this one applied. Django knows that it exists because it's actually seeing it right here. But it knows that you haven't applied it yet. So now what we're gonna do is just migrate it. Operations to perform, applying all the migrations, running migrations, applying sample app.0002 book popularity, okay. So now our model book, it now has a popularity. Let's really quickly check this. I could actually, it's going to be a little bit more readable if I here. Let me do this. Yeah, wait. There you go. So all our current books have popularity in none. All right. The field, it now exists. It's a good thing. Again, we haven't backfilled any previous data, but if we create a new book, it will have popularity from now on. So all the process of, I mean, we gave it a lot of thought and I explained it carefully, but compared to the manual process of altering tables, etc., you never touched SQL with this process. You just reflected the change in your model, in your object. You saw Python, you gave it a Pythonic name, you gave it a Pythonic field, you expressed if it was null or not with Pythonic attributes. You then created the migration, applied it, and you're done. You forget about everything else.
Could you just walk through the process once more then, from where we just added popularity in our model here?
Yep.
And could you just go to the next step?
The next step is, once you, of course, that this process is important because it's the change that you want to make to your data. It's based on requirements. It's based on many, many variables. Once you understand the change you want to make, you again reflect it in the Python model. And now you will make the migration. Actually, it should be right here. So first change is make the model change. The first step, sorry, make the model change. Second step is make migration. Make make Python inspect your models, see that there is a new field, and create the migration object. This one right here.
So that command, make migration, is going to compare your models and the database?
No.
No?
No, it inspects your current model.
Yeah.
And it realizes that there is a new field that you have changed. I don't know, for example, if I change this length,
yeah,
I say now instead of 255, I'm going to have 256.
Yeah. So what's it comparing to? It's comparing to the last save of this file, or it's comparing to loaded data?
It's comparing it to the previous migration that existed.
To the previous migration, okay.
Yeah.
So we only had 0001, for example. Then you run make migrations after you added popularity. So it knows what's different from 0001?
Yep, exactly. Okay. If you make changes.
So what is this command going to return then, the bash command?
What returns?
Yeah, like what happens?
Make migrations?
Yeah.
It just inspects the model, realizes if there are changes, and creates the file, creates the migration file.
Does it name it that way automatically?
Yep.
Oh, that was confusing me. Okay.
Combination of the model and usually the changes that are present in this current migration. Of course, if you make many changes at once, which is possible, you can add 10 fields. I don't know what's the name, but I don't know. It's probably going to be short.
This whole file then is auto-generated from that one bash command?
Yep, exactly. It's the migration object.
I was trying to get the whole thing in one sequence because there was a lot of jumping back and forth that it was hard to follow for me.
Yeah. And once you make the migration, again, you have just constructed the object, you need to apply it.
So just make migrate, that's it.
Make migrate. Yeah, you migrate it.
And
migrate.
Then do we run the app and it's like ready to go?
Yep.
Okay.
Migrate, what it's doing, it's again going to the database and realizing which migrations you have applied here and which ones you have applied here, and if there is a difference, it will apply them. So in this case, it's going to note, hey, here it has applied 01 and there is no popularity. And here we have 01 and 02. So this is missing. And it's gonna apply this one here. It's gonna create a popularity field. It's gonna now leave a trace here saying that up to 02 has been migrated.
That's cool. It's I'm glad I asked, because it actually is simpler than I thought it was from the initial explanation. So it's like, it's good to see just truth of that.
Yeah, because I show you, for example, the show migration that actually was showing this difference here. But yeah, conceptually or like all the required steps, it's just change the model, make the migrations, apply them. So now the next step that we need to perform is we need to backfill our books. We have a bunch of books. I don't know why we have so many books. Huh. I don't know what happened. We have a few books repeated. 1, 2, 3. Title. It's probably because of the state of the database. We didn't clear it at some steps. So what I'm going to do, it's just simple. I'm going to delete. I want to delete all the books that have an ID greater than 4. You guys remember how to do that? No? How can I filter? Give me all the books that are greater, that have an ID greater than 4.
Okay.
Book.objects.filter, and then ID greater than 4 in the parentheses.
Yep, greater or equals than 4. We're gonna use. There you go. And this thing we will just do, sorry, delete. There you go. I don't know when I created so many books. Doesn't matter. Let me check something because no, I don't want to have old data changing our models. So backfilling the books and their information, we have book ID, book.popularity. Of course, it's none, so we need to assign popularity to each one of these models. How are you going to do that? Well, you could run the shell, for example, make shell and run a simple script here, filling each one of these books. But this process is conceptually, and here it's kind of something you guys need to kind of accept, basically. It's whenever you need to modify a large volume of data, and it's related to the structure of your database, it's also considered to be a migration. But it's not a migration that it's changing the structure. It's just modifying data based on a given change of the structure. And it's usually called a data migration or data migration because it's related to the change of data, not that much of the structure. Again, you could have just coded it in a completely different way, but the good thing about making a data migration is that you will basically keep these trace of changes you've made. Some of these changes will involve a structure change, and some other changes will involve a data change, either removing things or adding things or values, right? Data to your database. In this case, we added the popularity field. We want to backfill it with certain value, we're going to create a data migration. And it's a regular Python script. It will let us write Python. It will let us write something similar to this code right here. Right? But of course, it's also going to keep these, it's going to be traceable later. So what you will need to do for that is create a new data migration, which is internally the command is pretty much the same one as make migration, with a tiny flag that it's going to signal to the command that it's a data migration. Let's just run it, and then you're going to see the result. So make migration, sorry, this is the command. Make migration, the previous make migration did this is the previous one, 02, remember? It added this popularity field. It did something for us. The data migration that we have just created, it created 003 auto, 2018 05 11, right? So this is information about the date and time. And this migration, you will see that it's empty. Actually, the data migration command is something like make migration. You're going to do minus empty. Empty. We're going to see that later. For now, with our make, it's just data migration. It works like that. And it's an empty migration. And here, you will be able to write your arbitrary code, whatever you want to write. But the good thing, again, is it's that you will gain these traceability feature, if you want. You will be able to undo a data migration, removing all the data. This data migration is pretty common. For example, let's say that you realize that, I don't know, you were always saving full name for your users, which was the first name, a space, last name. Actually, last name, this way. So you want to turn all of them into first name and last name. Of course, this is actually a really dumb way of turning it, but it doesn't matter. So you will write a data migration that will split the name into two parts. So that's going forward. What happens if you ever want to undo the migration? Well, you just need to join both first name and last name with a space, and you can go backwards and forward. Make sense conceptually? I'm going to show you the code, of course. So it's just a migration, one of these, but it's going to be a data migration, and it's initialized empty. The code, it's a little bit special. You will find a few special things. You have it right here. But for now, just kind of go with me and let's see how it works. And it's going to make a little bit more sense as you make more complex data migrations. You will start understanding it a little bit more. So we will first write a function. It's going to be backfill popularity. It's going to be the name. And the operation that you're going to perform here, let's compare it actually to the second one. Our previous migration, the one that added the popularity field, the operation was an add field operation. In this new auto migration, this new data migration, the operation will be a custom run Python. Just run my Python code, please. This is the one that will take care of backfilling the books. And this command, it works pretty much in the same way as the regular Python code. Line 11 to 16, it's the same thing that you've seen up to this point. The only new thing is the way that you will import your models. And you're not actually importing it. You're getting your model with this call. And the idea is that Django is creating like a frozen version of your database after every point in the migrations. Again, it's like a snapshot, and it's not allowed to import the model. You have to get it in this way, because If you're running the migration forward, it will give you the previous representation of your database. If you're running your migration backward, it will give you, in this case, for example, 04. So it depends the direction of your that you're running the migration, the different representation of the model you're gonna get. So that's why you do this special thing. So don't worry too much about it. It's actually in the first line of the documentation here. It's right there. By the way, I never remember the syntax. I always go to the documentation to get right here app.getModel, the app and the model you're trying to get. Everything else is still regular Python code. So we get, for example, all the titles, and in this case, we are using a values list method that I'm going to show you in a second. Actually, let me do it right now because it's not going to make sense in other case. So these are our books. This is my, there is a, sorry, let me go back a little bit. When you do books.objects.all or book.objects.filter or anything like that, what you're receiving back are objects. And that's really nice because we can work with them as objects. They have attributes, they have methods, etc. At some other times, we need lists. Like in this case, we need all the titles. We don't need the big fat objects. We just need titles, simple. So for that, you can use the values list method. It's pretty much, it's not changing anything. It's just saying, I want to get all these things. You can, of course, do a filter here. But I don't want the whole objects. I just want a list of these attributes. And you can pass a tuple here, for example. And we're going to make flat true, so it will turn it to kind of a list. So for title in all titles, print title, you will see that it's just a regular list of titles. Makes sense? It's just syntax. The method values list. So with all these titles, what we will do is get the max first. So we're going to do max of all titles. Pride and Prejudice. I don't know how you pronounce these guys. How do you pronounce it?
Pride and Prejudice.
Prejudice?
Yeah.
I made my best. Sorry.
You did good.
I could have probably. Oh wait, isn't this one? Oh, because I'm doing it backwards. The max here, I think it's considering these, so I should probably do the length. Do length of title for title in all titles. There you go. So the one with the max length is going to be 18, which is starting in Scarlet. So yeah, my bad. I have a tiny code, a tiny bug, a tiny code in the bug. I had a tiny code in the bug. That's pretty much the summary of my life. So fixing that tiny bug in the code right here. There you go. We're gonna backfill the model. So we will, now we know the max title or the longest title in our series of books. We will start iterating over each one of the books. We will set popularity equals to the same thing that we did before, and we will save the book. This is the command. Make sense? Again, line 11 to 16, it's all that you know already, except from this simple values list one. There is a tiny change of how to get the model in a migration. You cannot just import it. You have to get it from the offset get model. Good, bad?
Yeah, so the benefit to doing it this way rather than running that small little script in the shell would just be to document it, and so
Yes.
you could potentially reverse it. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, that's also something that I didn't mention, but yeah, if you're making a large enough change in your data, it's really good to have it committed. You know, this file needs to be committed to your GitHub repository. So it's going to be there. You know, someone at some point did this change, altered the entire database. So yeah, it's documented, it's reversible, it's traceable, we can read it, we can review it. You can submit a pull request and say, hey, this is my change. What do you guys think about it? You know, it's an important thing, making changes to your database, to your data in general. All right, so once we've created, I shouldn't have closed it. Once we have created the code, what we will do is we can actually, well, doesn't matter. I need a new step here, my bad. That's going to be apply the migration. I changed it backwards. Well, so again, what we did right here was creating the migration. We created the object, this one right here. We created one new migration, sorry, data that it's not applied yet. I need to apply it back to the database. So what I'm going to do is, as usual, make migrate, and it has just applied the migration. I'm going to do now make shell, and we're going to verify. I don't need the shell, actually. I will restart this thing. And we can pretty much know wrong notebook. You're out. And now we have our popularities field. Questions? All good? All right, so we need to make one more change. The limitation that we had in our previous model, that was making now popularity a required field. So for that, what we need to do is just remove this, as simple as that. I will actually keep this one commented out so you can see it. Just remove these fields, and again, you're expressing your model. You're saying my book has a popularity field which is not null. You're expressing what your final solution. It's not like you're saying, and now I will make it nullable, expressing an action. You're just declaring the structure of your model. You're saying, this is my model. And now, when I make the migration again, I made a change to the model. I have just modified the model. So now I will do make migrations. Now there is a change, and it's another important thing that happens, that it's, again, you're turning a nullable field into a not null field. So Django is smart enough to realize that you have done something with it, with that, but it's not completely sure about if you have applied it. You know, it doesn't know. I mean, it knows that these guys have just created a migration that has a data migration change in popularity of something, but it's not completely sure about it. So it's giving you the options. You can provide a default value, you can ignore me now, or you can just quit and add a default one. We can select any. I will try selecting 2. There you go, and we can see the popularity right there. And now we have created another migration. We haven't reflected the changes in the database yet. This was migrated. Now we have created another one, a structural one that made popularity not null. But this one is not applied yet. So now, again, I need to apply it, and I will just do make migrate. And then it worked. Now, this one is applied. And we have just handled this big task that involved changing a database column. Again, it might look simple, but it isn't. Changing database structure is always a really dangerous thing to do. In this case, we have handled it in the best possible way. I'm gonna change this so we can replay it in our heads. 6 and 7. There you go. So the steps were, it's like, you know, like you're moving objects in I don't know, to tables, in like real tables, your desktop, your desk, sorry. And you need to make some buffer space. You move things around, you backfill the data, and then you apply another change. In this case, the first step was relatively simple. We made the change to the model, we ran the migration. We then created an empty migration, which was our data migration. We wrote the code, applied the migration, modify the model with making it not null, make the migration, and modify and apply the migration again. Important takeaway, and maybe it's the last thing we say about this, is again, you're never expressing the changes as actions. Migrations are not an imperative process, they are a declarative process. You're saying, this is my model now. You express the new way or the new structure of your model. And then you do make migration. Django is the one comparing what you used to have with what you have right now and creating one of these accordingly. Questions? Anything?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I don't know if it, so basically something I'm kind of working on right now is that I have a database of users.
Yep.
And I created, like, remember I was talking to you about the referral link?
Yep.
So I created like a link model with a one-to-one relationship with each user. And so would that be something that would be good for a data migration to make sure all the current users have
Exactly.
Okay, that was what makes sense understanding it.
Especially if it's a required model. So the question here is, and this is a really good point, because sometimes these things don't have a clear path or a clear solution. It depends. So for example, Ryan has a user model and it's trying to have a referral code or something like that. So that can be a separate model. And the question is, should every user have a referral model? That's usually an ambiguous or subjective answer or question, right? It's like, yes, I don't know, let's talk to marketing people, let's talk to the business guys, and let's figure it out. So should all users have a link, referral code, whatever? If the answer is yes, you will have to make a not null relationship there. The user must have always this referral link, whatever. And in that case, you have a bunch of users, you have to backfill them all. So you will have to do this same process as the one we did right now. Questions, anything else before we wrap this migrations thing? I think the README is fixed aside from this thing. I will push it later so you guys have a way to replay it if you want to. Okay, so now. If you clone this project, this is gonna be commented out because popularity starts, we start with a model without popularity and now it's running. Run the server. I'm gonna run the server and see if everything is working. There you go, we have popularity, seems like it's working. And pretty much the rest is our previous code, but you will find something new here, which is our login button. So we will be doing some user authentication here. And user authentication works out of the box in Django. There is an authentication app, everything is working for you. There are ways, of course, to customize it. We can create our own models. We can say what our models are, because Django at some point has a model that represents a user, class user, and it's a user model. We actually call it the user model, but it's already provided by Django and it works just out of the box. And of course, we don't want to change it right now. It has a regular fields, username, password, first name, last name, email, right? Simple fields. Again, you can change it, you can customize it. Django 1.5, I think, introduced a big major change, so you can customize the user model and everything was working with that change. So, but right now we're gonna say it out of the box. So the first thing we're gonna do is don't write any code yet. We will create a user, and to create a user, we will use the make super user, create super user command. And this creates a, as the name says, super user. And we're gonna see why it's a super user in a second. We're gonna do, I don't know, admin sample 134. These security measures. And why is a super user? Well, because we can access now the admin page with that. Django has, oh no, oh, email. It's the wrong app. I didn't have the admin one. Give me 1 second. URLs. What happened here?
You didn't enter the email address, right? It wasn't an admin@example.com.
No, I have the whole URL is missing, which is weird. We had it. So this is, in this one we have it. All right, so I don't know what happened. Just put it back again where it belongs. That's it. You're gonna see why. Because of this. This is the admin site. And it's an administration like subsite in your app that will let you create or make any changes to your models from a normalized, already provided view. It's a really convenient thing. It's one of the strongest points of Django. Seriously, it's like if someone talks about Django and why they would even use Django is because the admin side is extremely useful. It's a full control panel right out of the box. It's going to work out of the box. So the first thing we're going to do is we have a few models right here that we need to make available in the admin website. By the way, I didn't change anything in terms of user authentication. It was just there. I just created a super user. I hooked up the admin site, which, by the way, when you start a new project, you don't even need to do what I did because this is there by default. I don't know what we changed that it wasn't. So it's there by default. You can create a super user and you're already working with a regular authenticated application without writing any code. This is extremely useful because, as you guys might know, working with users, creating accounts, securing them, selecting the correct crypto hashing algorithm for the passwords, all that, it's a lot of work. In this case, it just works out of the box. The only work that we need to do here is registering our models, and it's going to be something like this. Let me see if it's like this or from models, import country, author, and book. And I'm going to show you what we do first, and then once I show you how it looks like, sorry. Oh yeah, it's a model admin. There you go. So we're gonna create here a few more models. You need to create this admin. Actually, you don't need to create it, but we usually do it because it will allow some sort of customization to our models. So we're gonna change here author, and what else? We're gonna change country to book. There you go. Seems like everything is working. There you go. So now we can change, and we have a control panel of our models without writing a single line of code. You can have a function. I know people who sell these. They sell the Django admin. They are freelancers that they know really well how to customize these views because, of course, that it's really extensible. And they start selling these things. Do you need a simple administration site for your gym? The Django admin, it's just built in. You can, of course, you can again customize it, change it a little bit, whatever you needed to do it. You can just do it. You need to, I don't know how. For example, we needed to delete a bunch of objects today, and I have a lot of trouble with it. Well, with the Django admin side, it's extremely simple. I can just select here. I think we don't have any more repetitive. Delete selected authors. Go. Yes, I'm sure. That's it. So it's a full administration panel that you can choose right out of the box. So this is again tied to the concept of authentication. We have authenticated a user. We didn't do any special work for that. And now what we're gonna do is include a few login views and logout views in our code. Because if you want your user, if you have a real app, not a real app, but a real consumer-facing app, you don't want them to go to the admin login, to this one, because it just doesn't look good. You want to have your own login page. And for that, we can create it all by ourselves with a few template lines, and that's going to be it. And the code, it's going to be right here. What we're going to do is define two new views, one for accounts login, and the other one's going to be accounts logout. Those are the URLs, /accounts login, and it's going to be /account logout. These views, or these URLs, sorry, will map to a certain view as any other URL. But in this case, the view is not something that we will write, it's already written in the Django framework. So this is already provided. I haven't written a single Python line to get these working. Nothing. Just works out of the box, and I'm going to show you how. The code is, so this is a good idea too. It's like there are many views in Django that are already coded by other people, and you can just reuse. And actually you can, if you can figure out something that you do all the time with your views, you can also write views that can be reused by other people. In this case, I am importing the views module from the auth app, this entire auth app, which is of course the one handling the entire authentication process in Django. I'm renaming it just for extra clarity. And finally, I map these URL to this view that it's again already coded. I haven't written a single line of code. And I can customize this view by passing this parameter, that the template name is going to be login.html. And I am the one providing the template. So I can write this HTML and make it look pretty as my app needs to have. And the template that I'm writing, it's right here.
So what would happen if you don't provide a login template?
I think you get the one from admin. Oh, no, sorry. You must provide one, and by default, they assume that it lives inside registration./login.html. So you must provide one. I mean, you can skip these one. You want to use the default location, registration/login, but you must write the template. Questions? Nope. You guys are doing good? All right.
Okay.
I'm going to explain what this thing is, of course, because we're going to talk about forms in a second. But I want to give you a few minutes off because we've been talking for like an hour and 20 minutes. So 5 minutes or whatever you need, and we're going to resume. Sounds good? Go.
Sounds good.
You okay, Santa?
Yeah, what?
You look like you're just staring like soullessly at your computer like, oh God, when is it gonna end?
No, I am trying to save some time by typing something. So we don't have to make all manual here. All right, should we move forward? I'm gonna ping.
Aye, aye, Captain.
I'm here.
Good. Just quick message, just in case.
There you go.
All right, so beautiful piece of art. So we are going to now introduce forms, and I actually had a way to start typing it along with you, but we will not have time. So I just port the code, and we will start making usage of it, because I want you to understand it more conceptually than what it is syntactically, because syntactically isn't so complicated. It will actually be super simple. By the way, I'm going to introduce you first the bad way, then the good way. But the bad way is still pretty good. There's actually a better one, I would say. So bear with me here. It all started because I was showing you the login 8.html, and we had this thing right here inside the form. If you look back again to and let me change this that and this to the form that we used to have here, it was kind of dumb to be repeating all the time these things. It's like, again, in Python, we try to avoid repetition, and you have defined the fields that you need for a book. In this case, you have already done it. But still, you're typing everything in HTML. HTML is bad, it's ugly. We need to make it work in different browsers. You know, your programmers might not be HTML coders, etc. So it's usually better to work with Python. So Django has a feature named forms, which let you specify these same things, forms, but in Python. You will create a form in Python, and then you will do something like what we do here in the login.html form. We will do just print this form, and let's actually do it. So we will replace all this code. On purpose, I'm leaving it here so you can see it, with only these things. We will actually remove it right there. Because again, HTML sucks and it's a repetitive process, and we will try to avoid that repetition. So how will we define these forms? Well, this form thing is coming from somewhere, right? It's actually a Django variable. And I am passing it, I am responsible of passing it right here. I will actually change the name to this. I will put my form, so it's a little bit more explicit, that it's no magic, my form. And we will use as_p or as table, for example, to represent the form. As_p is as paragraph. It's going to use the p tag to put each one of the fields. So again, in my views, I am the one responsible of passing the form. And what is this form? It's this class that I'm creating. So here you see how Pythonic this is, because I am creating a Python class book form, and it's creating this thing for us in HTML. Pretty convenient. I don't know if it will just work out of the box. No, it won't. Or will it? Let's try it. Did I delete all the books? Okay. Oh, yeah, when we deleted the... There you go. Oh, we are not having here the save method, but it doesn't matter. Let me do it again. The Raven, 1, 2, 3, 4. We post it, and we have here all the information before. So this form that I have right here, and the idea of now is focusing on the form, is working. It's completely working. We have just replaced this whole ugly chunk of HTML with a simple my form as p in this case, and with this form right here. And of course, that on purpose, I haven't shown you this before. Yeah, I haven't shown you this yet. But the idea is that we will express our forms in a similar syntax as we express our models. Because again, we want to make it expressive. We want to say, this is my data, this is my representation of my data, and we are going to express it in a way, right, in a Pythonic way that represents that. And finally, this is our form. Book form, it's a forms.form. You will see that it looks really similar to models. It's a forms.form, and it has a few fields. Title field, which is a char field, has an author field, which is a model choice field. This is really neat because we don't need to remember the previous, where is our template? Login, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore. Here, how were we populating the options of our previous model? we were iterating over each one of the authors. We had to pass the authors here in the view. We actually don't need this anymore. There we go. Because our form is taking care of everything for us. So here we should say author is a model choice field. Choice fields is basically representing this widget. Model choice field. And the query set where it should pull the data is this thing. And I just provided the whole thing. You could have filter it. For example, filter, I don't know, popularity of the author is greater than 3. Whatever. You can do pretty much whatever you want there. Empty label, none, because there will be at least one author. And ISBN, regular char field, popularity, regular decimal field. All these fields are from the forms module, not from the model module. Again, it looks a lot like a model, but it's a form. It's representing this structure that will be dumped into HTML. And actually, you don't need these forms to have a model behind the scenes. You can create a form of whatever you want. You can do it in whatever way you want. Make sense? This is something that usually if people have trouble understanding it because you're judging the solution. Because if you just focus in understanding how it works and say, like, make peace with it, be a stoic, you know, and just say, okay, it's like, this is a form. Okay. Conceptually, there isn't much to add there. It's just, there's a book form, and it saves us of writing this whole HTML. Make sense? Questions?
Well, I guess my question would be, how does it affect styling?
Styling?
Because you don't have the same the regular HTML elements there, or what does it show up as?
It is creating HTML. I mean,
of course it is creating it. Does it create it then the same? I guess with all the same tags.
It's right here. So it's of course a little bit condensed, but you have the hidden field, and then you have it's creating a new paragraph, and it's giving you a label, and it's putting an input. It's actually also understanding as you guys saw with also with where is it? With models, we can put restrictions here. You can keep adding restrictions and more things. You can actually do validation with forms, many fancy things. They're pretty neat. And add them all here. And this thing, it's going to take care of representing that in HTML in this case. Styling works just by, there are two options. You could do the styling outside, considering this structure, or you can change this structure. You can, instead of doing a P, you can use a div. You can change it.
Okay, got it. Simple.
Yep. There's actually Django Bootstrap project that will let you will do something like, where is it? Here you will do something like, I think it is, I don't remember how it is, Bootstrap form, my form, and it will style it as a regular Bootstrap form, you know.
There's also material UI for Django forms. I just found
it uses the Bootstrap.
Yeah, I just found Bootstrap. I just found there's material UI, Google's components library, or style guide.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't know. So yeah, these are form creator right there. Neat. We haven't done much. Let me get rid of all this code. There you go. And now you saw that once you have once you have the form working, it's still sending the information as it should. So there you go. It's still sending it as it should. Now, in the view, now the process is going to be a lot easier because we don't need to manually create to access these. You can instantiate a form. You can instantiate a form by passing the request.post method attribute. And you will see that there is a pretty, how to put it, there is a pretty conventional pattern that we follow that it's based on these is valid plus clean data. And I'm gonna just do it for now. I'm gonna do book data. It's gonna be clean data. It's gonna be empty just to show you what we have. Pretty much the same thing, but now author is the author. It's not an ID as it was before. So now saving this model, actually saving this model, it's going to be a lot easier. I can just do something like with objects.create. I'm gonna do title equals forms clean data. Actually, let's do data here. Data at title. I'm gonna do here author equals to that thing, and I don't know why. Here ISBN is gonna be equals to that, and popularity it's gonna be equals to that. And I will create the book, and if everything worked fine, I wanna do return, redirect back to slash. Redirect is there. In other case, we will run this, but we will add an error message because we know now that these fail. We're going to do and this one is going to be book creative. There you go. Let me reload the page, and the book has just been created. Let me create another one. There you go, it's created. So creating things, it's getting a lot easier. I don't need to manually write the code. I can just get forms doing things for me. And this is valid one. It's going to be really, really, really important because, as we will see later, you will be able to define custom validation mechanisms that are just aside of the length of the field. For example, you can validate. You saw the type of validation that the create super user has when it matches. If your password is too similar to the email, it will reject it, etc. You can add those validation mechanisms. It's not really hard. Yep.
I have a question. Can you go back to where the code is for the actual create button? Is there
the book?
Yeah, for the when you press create.
Yep, it's this one.
So that is what makes the create, and then once you press it, it sends a post request with all the data.
So when you, oh no, sorry. Remember that there are two views. One of them is this one that it's rendering the form, and then you input some information, select another author, sorry, and this is one view. This is the index view that it's rendering the form. We create the form empty and we render it. When you hit this button, the create view kicks in because the form has as action create book. So we go to the create book. When you hit it, you will go to this view and you will create a form, but in this case, you will not create it empty. You will create it with data already. And the data is just within the requested post dictionary. Remember that this dictionary contains all the data sent as a post request. Make sense up to that point?
Yeah, kind of.
Remember, if we go back to our previous class.
So I'm also wondering to understand, Santo, when it's when the create book button is clicked, it's got the action equals / create book on it, right?
Yep.
And so it's actually, is it actually sending the browser to that? It's sending the browser to that URL, right?
Yep.
And that it's a routing thing that triggers the actual function, and then because of the redirect, we just don't see it because it happens so fast.
Yep.
But if it operated slowly, we'd actually see the URL change.
Yep, and the redirect back. Yep. You actually couldn't see it because with the post, or maybe you could. I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, I think you should see it. So this is our previous view. There are no forms here. This is from our previous class. When you are sending a request, actually, let's get this one here. There you go. When you send when you click submit in this form, the browser is sending a post request to the URL specified in the action attribute of the form. It's sending a post request to that place, which is this one right here. And with that post request, there is a bunch of information traveling with it. It's actually all this information is traveling within that request, right? So this is again to HTML. Remember, you had a post request can have, just do it, post to / create book, and it's sending the form information, sending title equals something, author equals something, ISBN equals something, and popularity equals something else. The browser is sending this. It's sending it as a post request. So you have that data within request.post. And it's a regular, it's not a full dictionary, but it's pretty close to a Python dictionary. So that's why you can access it in this way.
Does that mean that this is not a secure method of dealing with form data?
Good question. It is if you have TLS, if you have HTTPS.
So you could use this legitimately for for payment processing if you have an SSL.
Yeah, the entire web works on top of the form HTTP. If you go to PayPal to submit a payment, it will be sent using a post request. Of course, that again, if the HTTPS thing will make that the post request send the entire thing sent by the browser to the server is secure. But it's a regular post.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Ryan?
Yeah.
Sounds good. You clear on it?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm just gonna have to work with it a little bit, but that's been something that's kind of given me trouble is the forms and stuff.
Yeah. Back to the HTTP classes. Go over that practice again. HTTP is fundamental to anything. It's really important. And the videos and the practice, and you will be up to speed again with it. Django is just making fancy usage of HTTP, but behind the scenes, it's just HTTP. So this is our previous view. I will actually let it here. And these new one that we have just reading using the form, it's going to be a lot easier because we haven't done it in this one. But if we would have wanted to, for example, do validation, we would have to do something like if the title is too similar to whatever the password, you have to start doing all your validation here, which is not really nice. With the usage of forms, we will be able to actually put that validation right here. Questions? You guys good? I have one more thing to show you and we will be done. By the way, you can change the widgets you select for your, actually, let me see if this works with this one. I haven't tried this one. The widgets that are rendered, because, oh yeah, nice. So yeah, widgets, right? So you can make this thing a text area instead of a regular input field. That's all things you can customize in the definition of the form. But more importantly, and kind of to wrap this thing up, this form right here looks a lot similar to the model we have here. And of course, again, we try not to repeat things. This definition, or the definition of the form, is the same one as the definition of the book. And there is a smart Django class that will take a model and will build a form out of that model without you writing a lot of code. And that smart code is a model form. So here we will change, let me leave this one right here so we can keep it at sight. We will use the book here. And it's going to be a model form instead of a regular form. And the only thing that you have to add is a meta class, something that Django will use a lot, you will see. And you have to define the model. It's going to be a book. And the fields that you want to use. We want to use all the fields, but let's just actually think we can exclude them to use them all. And now, if I show you back our previous view. Well, we need it. Exclude nothing. Yep, there you go. Our form is built and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code and aside of the length of or how much code we've written or not written. The important thing is we are not repeating the definition of our form. Definition is guessed or is inherited from the definition in the model right there. Right? So it's just using a model form. Make sense?
That looks like magic. I don't really understand it at all.
But it's not something you have to understand. If you want to understand this code, you have to go read the code. It's just, so this guy is inspecting your model. You're saying which model, and it's creating one of these based on these. So it's inspecting your model and say, hey, this guy has a title model field. I will create a title form field. It has an author foreign key. It's going to create a models child field based on that author. Just, of course, that there is a lot of smart code behind the scenes, but important thing is that it's creating the same thing that we were creating before.
How do you change, like, if you want to use that, can you add in a widget then?
Yes, you can. I think you have to redefine. I think you have to redefine the field. Forms. Or password should, I don't remember. Fields. No, widgets. Yeah, here you go. So for a given field, you can change the widgets. So maybe we can try it. So for author, we said we want to use a radius select. I think it should be an instance. I don't know. Yep, there you go. So of course everything can be customized. So relatively simple to do. Just, this is something that you guys will never, you shouldn't expect to remember. You know, it's just conceptually understanding it, and then you have to always go back to the documentation and to Stack Overflow. So we have our model. Radius selects look really bad, so we'll just go with the regular. And one last thing, the create book, these now looks really repetitive. But as this thing is a model form, you will be able to just name this thing. We can name this thing. Actually, it should be, I hope the pattern is also in documentation for you. Because if it's not, we're going to have a problem. Yes, it is right here. So you can change this entire thing, this form, and as you can see right here, it's going to behave pretty much in the same way as a form, but now you can do book equals form.save, and that's it. And everything here, it's going to be guessed again by the model itself. Let's see if it works. Another book. It's not a book. Mark Twain. Popularity 3. It's created. There you go. It just worked. So the idea is, again, it does look cryptic because there is a lot of logic behind the scenes we don't see, so we can just avoid that repetition. But basically, it's guessing this same code out of these fields that we don't see because they were guessed out of these models. So again, the idea is to define things only once, define them as models. Our app is, after all, just built on top of a good, solid structure of models. And above that structure of models, we're going to create forms, validation, etc. questions?
Pretty
All right,
good for now. I just have to pretty much keep on reviewing it until I get it.
Yep. Oh, no, sorry. I didn't want to stop sharing because I have something for you. I haven't enabled the events in the platform. I'm going to do it right now, but it takes some time. So I wanted to just get you guys here. Project for today, just working with a little bit more of forms so you can practice. There is also authentication, which is provided for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Oh, by the way, something really important about authentication, just 1 second. Once your user is authenticated or not authenticated, depends. For example, here, I'm not authenticated. You will actually, your request object will have information about that user, so you can create like these custom messages. If the user is logged in or not, you can realize that with right here, requested user. So if requested user is authenticated, give me requested user username, requested user the first name, etc. And you can of course do the same thing here, request.user. So that's an important thing. Practice for you. Keep working with similar data as before. All the authentication is pretty much provided, so you have to start working with models. Sounds good? No, right?
It's always easy when you're doing it, Santa. It's so hard when we're by ourselves.
That's the idea, of course. You couldn't be here. All right.
I will do my best.
When is the video for the course on Monday? I mean on Tuesday going to be up?
It's not?
No, not for me at least.
Oh, well, let me check that. It should. Sorry.
I think it was.
What, Mike? You're muted. Mike?
What's that?
You said something, but you
Xavier. Yeah, my connection's not good, but yeah, actually, I couldn't access that this week's module in the dashboard last I checked.
I'm gonna double check right away as I enable the objects.
Yeah, it's still grayed out.
I will share the recordings right away with the direct links. And
is that the one for foreign keys and forms?
Good question.
Because I have it up right now.
Unit 10's grayed out for me.
So you two have the Unit 10 entirely grayed out, Mike and...
Yep.
Yep.
The class is foreign keys and forms. On models should be. So Jordan, can you put the URL real quickly of the video?
Absolutely.
In the
Give me 1
group
second.
that we have, and Xavier, you can get it from there, and I will see why you two have it grayed out and Jordan doesn't. Thank you very much. I had my bad Waldo shirt.
Your shirt is fine.
But it's like the the meme version of Waldo. Find Waldo.
Yeah, I don't remember his name though, but I know what you mean now.
Yeah, it's actually like black and yellow, nothing like that. But just blue and white, whatever. All right, guys. See you later. I don't know.
Thank you,
Tomorrow,
Santa.
probably. A good day.
All right. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Take
Bye,
care.
guys.
Thanks, Santa. Good class.